Hello everyone and welcome to another New World video. My name is Brian if you happen to be new to the channel, but if you're already a part of this incredible 15,749 of y'all who've hit that subscribe button and have taken a chance on my content, welcome back and welcome in. I do believe in transparency when it comes to my content, so I show off my stats. We talk about that from time to time when you guys are interested, or if you guys have questions about getting into content creation, always just let me know. I'm happy to help. But I want to get caught back up on all the news for the latest expansion to New World. Now, unfortunately, over the last 5-6 days, I've been very sick. The whole family's been sick. We've been fighting this just nasty stuff that's been going around, but thankfully we're on the mend. But overall, if you've already seen the dev update, you might not get necessarily too much new information in this video. However, you will get my thoughts along the way. So if you guys want to stick around for that, I appreciate it. If this video can get a 50 like challenge, if you guys can hit that like button at 50 times on this video, it will mean the world to me. I find that putting out challenges ends up being a way better way to have that call of action, but you guys can let me know what your thoughts are. Obviously, the big takeaway is mounts. That's what they kind of started off first. Personally speaking, we've known this is coming, and I actually really dig the system that they're getting into. Now they got horses, wolves, lions, tigers, and something like that. Like, I've seen it said tigers and lions, so we'll just say big cats for riding mounts to start. And yes, there will be more types of mounts coming down in the future. You can level up your mounts, and the faster that you level, the higher your level, the faster that you can ride. You also have slots for your mount. You can equip trinkets. You can also get different debuffs while mounted. One example is they gave you dismount and it heals you, and I was like, that is freaking cool. That's going to change up so much. But also, again, I love the player agency here. I love when you just say, hey, here's the things that you can do with this, and it's not just a simple go fast button. It ends up being kind of a new system that they've introduced, so I'm excited to see how that plays out. Now, outside of the mounts that go into the progression system changes, so the level cap's going up from 60 to 65. The gear score is going up to 700. They're getting rid of expertise. They're gonna say they're gonna give you less gear, but it's gonna be more meaningful. And as somebody who's looking over at all of this various gear that I've been, just showered with, a lot of it ends up being something that I just don't end up needing. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the the salvage system as this goes forward. But also in terms of progression, trade skills will be going up to 250. Now, the thing I'm looking to test out when we go on the PTR with the trade skills is, with your aptitude level, does that then continue once you hit 250? Do they put a pause on that? I really think and would hope that we'll see an aptitude level added after 65 as well. Just in terms of player experience, I think that would be a huge benefit, especially when it comes down to seasonal XP, progression, etc. But let's get to the weapon here. The new flail weapon, they show off the two different skill trees, the cleric skill tree and the Bastion skill tree. Now, for the skills that they showed off in the video, Arcane Smite, leap forward and strike the ground with Arcane Force, dealing 130% weapon damage to all targets within 2.5 meters of impact. Leap behind a hazardous area at the impact point that inflicts a stack of impairment for 6 seconds to all targets that enter it. An impairment deals 10% arcane weapon damage per second and inflicts weaken, reducing their base damage by 10%. This ability has grit attached to it. You then have Arcane Eruption, drag the head of the flail against the ground, causing the eruption of arcane energy in front of the player, dealing 125% weapon damage and inflicting 2 stacks of impairment for 6 seconds to all targets hit. Automatically follow up with additional melee attack that deals 130% weapon damage, and impairment deals 10% arcane weapon damage per second and inflicts weaken, reducing their base damage by 10%. And then you have Arcane Vortex, swirl the flail above the player's head, dealing 4 rapid hits of 85% weapon damage in a 3-meter radius around the player. After the first spin is complete, trigger a 3-meter blast of energy, granting 10% in power for 5 seconds to all allies inside the radius. This ability does also have grit. Then in the other tree, you've got Barrage. This is the Bastion tree. Sprint forward up to 10 meters. Upon reactivating the ability, press the basic attack or reaching the end of the sprint. Leap forward to an additional 6 meters and slam the ground, dealing 30% weapon damage to targets in range of the flail during the leap and 80% weapon damage upon landing, staggering targets on impact. They say character collision is disabled while sprinting forward. Taunt gym compatible for this one, so this is going to be, I guess, your crowd control off tank skill. You have trip, swing the flail forward, latching onto a target, dealing 50% weapon damage and knocking them to the ground. And then you have warding bludgeon. Perform a spinning leap with the swing of the flail down to the strike targets, dealing 100% weapon damage. While leaping, trigger a burst of energy, granting the reinforced fortify and self with all allies within 3 meters of the player, increasing armor by 50% for 8 seconds or 3 hits are taken. This ability does also have grit. So after the skills themselves, like all in all, like I can't wait to see how this plays. And they said the PTR is going to have a shorter PTR than we've seen in the past, which at the end of the day, I think it's kind of good. So that way you don't, like, as a content creator, I don't want to just have to live and breathe on the PTR and then kind of burn myself out of the expansion. I see that from time to time where in the pursuit of content for you guys, like, oh, I'm going to be on the PTR. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm not playing on live right now because we have a PTR up. But ultimately, it's going to be fun to kind of test out the expansion, give you guys my thoughts here on this channel. Now, the artifact system sounds interesting. It's a new tier of weapon. So we already have the legendaries. Artifacts are going to be a tier above that. But they're going to only let you have one weapon, one trinket, and one armor piece of the artifacts equipped. It feels kind of a little bit like Destiny because of how overpowered these things are. And they give an example of a great axe that scales off of int. So they say that you could then use this great axe to pair with your fire staff and have a completely new build altogether. So you can kind of do that already with gyms, but this means that you don't need that gym slot to do that, and you can have new options for new builds. So I think this is going to end up being some interesting things that people can build and have a lot of fun with. Now, they say for the perks themselves on artifacts, they actually are kind of, you have to unlock them. You have to quest off them, do some various different tasks to unlock that perk. So anyway, it sounds like the Catalyst. Like, it seems like they're taking some real big inspiration from Destiny and how they've done it with their exotics in that game. And so I'm actually really excited to see how the system plays out, what kind of artifacts we can get our hands on with, and with the reduction of gear being showered at the player, hopefully this then leans more into gear being crafted to kind of fill in some gaps, and also that when you do get gear, it ends up feeling a lot more impactful to your build as opposed to just, oh man, I gotta go spend some time cleaning up all this stuff. And you don't know if something truly is good for you or not, because, you know, at the end of the day, when you're trying to have to clear off like 3,000 items, you're like, all right, let's just start pruning. Anyway, now here's where things get interesting. And because at the end of the day, like, I'm kind of slightly disappointed in the level cap increase, but I understand it. As somebody who really enjoys like horizontal and sandbox based content, I hope that we don't see them rush into that verticality too quickly, because what that does end up saying is that means everything then has to get faster and easier at some point. Imagine the game having a level cap of 200, for example. Well, that could make the first 150 levels pretty pointless. And so they end up just making them, bullet train fast all the way to that. And then all of a sudden the real grind comes at the end. Now, them going up 5 levels isn't that bad, but here's where things get interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts regarding the expedition and mutators. The base level difficulty is now going to be a story mode for players going into and easing into dungeon gameplay. This is something we've talked about on the podcast, and what ends up being, I guess a value here is that for people looking to get that clear, for people looking to get that win, this should help that out a lot. And then the expedition becomes that top tier. The expeditions before mutations were that kind of top tier. So it ends up being that, like, yeah, there's times where you're just not going to win and you're not going to get it clear. And I think that just ultimately starts to get people nervous or less willing to help. But a story mode means that it's going to, like, that tells me that it's pretty much going to be a cakewalk. And then you're going to have the mutating system, which they've now shifted to a 3-tier system for the mutators, and that I think also is going to help keep that, kind of tight. At 10 tiers, you end up having where, are you on, defining those groups to kind of pull people into that so they can unlock it. 3 tiers that I guess, hard, extra hard, ultra hard, is going to be something that is, we'll see. We'll see what the ultimate balance ends up being, and we'll see if this ends up addressing a lot of issues that people have had with the expeditions. I've enjoyed the challenge of them, but that doesn't mean I've always gotten a clear, and it also means that it's probably content that I'll do more of with that. And hopefully we'll see the 2.0, Party Finder system roll out some point in the near future, but we haven't heard any updates on that, at least on this dev update. Then they get into this, the influence changes. This is something I think is quite exciting. I can't wait to see how this feels in real time. Every single day, there's going to be influence races that are going to pop up in 3 different zones. 3 capture points plus a fort to go after. Updating PvP missions will also be closer to these various capture points. If you capture a fort, it's going to be locked for an hour. Now that faction that captures the fort will get that benefit of actually capturing that fort, and it will let you know when that hour is up so that you can retake it. This is, I think, really exciting. This is one of the things we've been calling for a long time. We'd go and capture forts only to leave and have them recaptured. And so what will be interesting, though, is that this will cause a defense on that attack aspect when this influence race is happening. I do wonder if it ends up just being where players are just like, all right, we're gonna trade off these buffs, and we're gonna go capture. But I wonder, because once it's captured, you can go fight the people who've captured it, but you can't take it. So there's going to be that natural cooldown. So it'll be neat to see if they after an hour people fight over holding it. Now we'll have to see how in the long run this timing and these zones work, but I'm really excited to see how this plays out. As long as a faction has earned enough to influence, in this case, within these, timed zones, which are going to, I think this is going to really incentive the open world PvP, because it's going to tell people where they need to go as a part of their faction. So if you're looking for open world PvP, this will be, this is that focused, event driven, gameplay element here. Then you can have the war that will kick off that you can then try and take over control. And they're going to be monitoring to see what all needs to be adjusted, which makes sense. But I'm personally very excited to see how this plays out and then what kind of feedback we have from that aspect. With all this being said, it feels like the New World expansion is going to be coming out and firing on a lot of different cylinders. I'm very excited to go hands-on with it. Obviously, the big disappointment, we haven't heard anything about native controller support being added just yet, but we know that they are working on it. I think if they were able to time that with the expansion, that would be really great, but it does not sound like that is coming in at this point. But I will keep you guys up to date on any of those updates as the game gets ready to roll out for the rest of us. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for hanging out for this video. I appreciate you guys for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. But until then, take care.